Hello, everyone. Welcome to ReachIvy's webinar on how to make design meet business. ReachIvy is a premium education and careers advisory focused on study abroad and career guidance. I'm your host, Juti Mandana, Senior Counselor at ReachIvy. With me today, I have Aditya Mehta, the founder and CEO of Art&Found, an online art startup. Art&Found is a curated platform to discover quality, affordable art by Indian artists from around the world and caters to a young generation of art lovers. After founding his startup, Aditya worked in advertising for 7 years, most recently in the creative department of Ogilvy, Mumbai. He quit the day his startup raised a seed round of $110,000. Aditya has been featured on CNBC's TV 18 Young Turks, is a recipient of the TISO Signature Innovators Award, and most recently, his startup won the Hot 100 Technology Award for the e-commerce sector. Thank you so much for joining us today, Aditya.
Thanks, Tuti. Thank you for the introduction. So
I'll jump straight to the questions. Can you tell us a little bit about how design meets business in Art&Found?
Right. So, I think you put it across pretty well, concise about what Art&Found is and what I do and my background. Let me just talk about it a little more in my own words. So I run a startup called Art&Found, which is a curated platform for Indian artists from around the world to showcase their work to a young generation of art lovers. So we cater to a different set of art buyers who want to simply do up their home or offices. And, Art&Found started with the purpose to bring together the creative community in India. And, we started, it started as a side project while I was working full-time at Ogilvy in Mumbai. And eventually, it evolved into a startup. And as you put it, I was still working full time while running the startup in its beta mode. And then I quit when I raised my seed round of funding.
So, what are some fundamental design lessons we can all apply to business?
Right. So, having basically, because I'm running the startup, I can talk a few things about, I can definitely, I'm just going to jump onto the slides now and so, as I was saying, we have a small office in Mumbai. I'm just going to show you some of the photographs of the space. Let's get into the 3 design lessons. So the first one, design for your grandmother. Now, design should be a fresh approach to something that's already familiar. It's not about reinventing the wheel, but rather how to make the wheel go smoother and faster. Now, do you know how Snapchat came to be? It's not just a random chat or photo sharing app that Evan Spiegel came up with. It's actually based on a deep-rooted human behavior. So what would we do as kids in class, right? We would send secret personal notes around, till it reaches the person. And once that person reads it, what do? They rip it apart and throw it. Snapchat used the same concept, added technology, and came up with something our minds are already subconsciously familiar with. Today it's one of the most valuable companies in the world. Behance. the largest creative community platform. Now, do you know Behance today has lesser features than when it started? Scott Belsky and his designer co-founder Matthias Correa have actively made a shift from tons of new features to focusing on improving the user experience and creative workflow. So it just boils down to the simple fact of less is more. Slack. You know what's a major part of Slack's $2.8 billion success? It's simple, intuitive design. People were already using email, WhatsApp, and Messenger, but Slack got everyone hooked with their fun design language, which is just simple to use. So let me just delve on some of the must-haves versus nice-to-haves. So what are must-haves? So must-haves as entrepreneurs and product designers, or even product managers, you need to differentiate between the must-haves and nice-to-haves. So must-haves are things that you need to have in your design, that you need to knock off quickly and move faster. And these are mainly, processes and workflows. And nice-to-haves are things that can wait, features and transitions or funky elements, or making something look really nice. You have to do that, but that can be later at some point. And that's how you can reach a minimal viable product much faster. And why is this important? Because you need to prioritize and get shit done faster. You need to launch faster and fail faster. Because when you're starting up, time is the only currency you have. So it just comes down to, keep it simple. And remember that users want something that's easy, enjoyable, and memorable. And that's exactly what your brand or product should be doing. We need to remember that it's our responsibility to make brands and products not only usable, but also enjoyable enough for people to keep coming back, even if it means our grandmothers. Number 2, design with empathy. Now, there's, as designers or product managers, too many times we get caught up in the unnecessary details of making something look good. We forget about the user. Steve Jobs like designer, is that of a lone wolf who know what customers want before they know it themselves. But the truth is, there are very few people who can actually pull that off. Now, I want to move on to this theory called jobs to be done, and I really recommend reading this book. It's available as a PDF online, and you can simply hashtag JTBD, jobs to be done, and you'll just find a lot of information about it. Now, what is jobs to be done? So this theory simply asks, what job is your product hired to do? The power of JTBD concept helps the innovator understand that customers don't buy products and services. They hire various solutions at various times to get a wide array of jobs done. So it's simply asking what job is your product or brand replacing? Right now, let me give you some examples, right? So Henry Ford didn't think about the job as a faster horse, right? But as getting from point A to point B as quickly as possible. Airbnb is replacing your travel agent, your booking agent, right? Same with Skyscanner. You don't need a travel agent for Sky because you're using Skyscanner. So just remember that people buy products and services to get jobs done. And while products come and go, the underlying job to be done does not go away. So this notion is at the heart of the jobs to be done theory. And great businesses are built on great experiences, right? Which brings me to empathy, right? Coming back to the point, design with empathy. So empathy is actually about making users happy. And true empathy begins even before there's a product to build or design. It begins with why. Now, that may seem like an obvious question, but companies often jump into new products without thinking things through, simply because they're following a trend or are interested in creating something new and cool. Now, asking themselves why they want to create something is the first step in successful design. And it's also one that's focused on users, not designers. Now, let me just throw some examples. Tinder knew exactly what they didn't want to be. They didn't want to be just another dating app. It knew that people didn't want to view a grid or a list of random faces, one face at a time, and only two features, right? Swipe left or swipe right. They knew exactly why and who it was needed for. So empathy helps you create a link with your audience. And this connection creates repeat customers, repeat users, readers, and a great brand following. And the true value of empathy is in this cycle, which is you care for your audience and they care for you. Number three, design for humanity. Now, in 1950, an American psychologist named Harry Harlow conducted an experiment that separated infant monkeys from their mothers just a few hours after birth. Now, each monkey was isolated in a cage and given two dummy mothers, one out of metal wire with a milk bottle, and the other out of synthetic fur but no milk bottle. Now, Harlow assumed that the infants would gravitate towards the metal mother because it provided basic need, right? Nourishment. Much to his surprise, the infants preferred the realistic looking dummy mother. Now, the obvious conclusion is that most creatures have basic needs, right? Food, clothing, and shelter. But it seems that there's a much bigger need, and that is emotion. Now, the first time you meet someone, your first thought isn't how do they function, right? It's how do they make me feel? Now, function lies at the core of design, right? We all know that. We've heard Steve Jobs say that. But we know that we design things to solve problems, to fulfill needs. And that form and function are concepts that every designer considers while building or designing a product. But there's a third, more subtle factor at play in design, one that works on a subliminal level, and that's feeling, right? That's why some brands are so successful because the advertising agencies have solely on the emotional experience. Harley Davidson doesn't sell motorcycles, it sells freedom. Nike doesn't sell shoes, it sells self development. And IKEA doesn't sell furniture, it sells experience. Now, speaking of IKEA, I'd like to end my talk with one of my favorite ads that just throws light on empathy.
Many of you feel bad for this lamp. That is because you're crazy. It has no feelings. And the new one is much better.
Thank you so much, Aditya. Now, the question I had while you were speaking, something came up, and I really appreciated the way you point out the aspirational value of branding. It's not so much the product itself, but what you're selling to the audience that is going to stick with them. So with that in mind, what are some tips you would give to young business owners who are just starting out to incorporate design into their branding in an easy way that they can all do without having huge budgets or having a big team or lots of manpower? What are some simple things that everyday business owners can do to increase the value of their brand?
Yeah. So thanks for that question, Suti. So I think it's really important to have one person on the team that knows a little bit about the importance of design and who can help incorporate. So it doesn't have to be a designer. I'll give you an example, right? Like Scott Belsky, the founder CEO of Behance, was an investment banker on Wall Street, Harvard MBA, who went on to build the largest platform for the creative community. So there's pretty much like photographers, illustrators, designers, anyone in the creative community is present with their work on Behance, right? Now, Scott, he did a smart thing. He just found a designer co-founder. And that's why Behance today has been so successful, because he knew the power of design. So I think it's really important to keep in mind the language that you're speaking in. Scott was very clear that he's talking to designers, so he needs to speak in that language, which is design, right? It needs to look good. Similarly, for Art&Found, I'm talking to artists, and visually it really matters. And I think it's not just for the creative community. I think it appeals to everyone. All of us love, great UI UX experiences. I think it just comes down to the three things I spoke about, and empathy is a really big one. So I think I would recommend just getting on board that one person who has that affinity towards design and understands design and can just bring simplicity in the flow of building the process.
Thank you. And could you tell us a little bit more about the value of time when it comes to branding? You touched on it towards the beginning. What is the value of time for a startup when it comes to branding and marketing?
Yeah, so I think it's important to differentiate between the must-haves and nice-to-haves, right? So practically sitting down and knowing what to prioritize to put the MVP out there, and then you have to just put milestones down where you can get to the nice-to-haves at some point, right? So I think it's speed. Speed is really important in starting up. You're always competing against people who have bigger teams or just more manpower, right? And I think it just comes down to putting in the number of hours, but you have to be smart about it, where you just have to prioritize on the must-haves versus the nice-to-haves. And I think once you have that clear, you just get to your product, go to strategy much faster.
Could you tell us a little bit about when it comes to design for a business product, what are the markers that a company should be looking at to see if the brand design is working? How do you tell whether your branding is successful? Is it simply in terms of revenue, or is there something more? Is it in terms of like a customer lifetime acquisition value? What are some metrics that companies can use?
Yeah, so that's a really tricky one. Metrics to test design. I think the simplest formula that most of us use is the BML loop, right? Which is the build, measure, learn, and it's again just putting your product out there in milestones. So I think that's the test that you can have, and then of course you can do your A/B testing, which really helps understand where users are experiencing the faults, or how it's flowing smoothly. So there's a lot of products out there that can help you do that. The Hotjar is one. So hotjar.com, you can use that to actually see how users are experiencing the website or your product. So there's certain features like heat maps or just recorded videos that shows you where the user is clicking. There is also wingify.com. You can use that for A/B testing. So I think there's tons of features and products out there which are free, that I would definitely recommend people who are starting out to just make use of. And just use it with the BML loop, right? Build, measure, learn. Just come back and reiterate the product. Put your product out there, get feedback, come back and reiterate the product. This is just a never-ending cycle, and that's how you'll just see your product evolve in design if you just follow that simple loop.
So would you say that design and branding then is an ongoing process for a company, and that you just have to keep working at it and not lose heart if you find your product is slow to take off? Just keep refining it and keep going, and it should work?
Absolutely. Just one word, right? Persistence. So here's the thing about talent and persistence. I think talent will take you somewhere, but persistence will take you where you really want to go. Talent is going to be limited, right? But if you're persistent, it will take you where you really need to go, where you really need to take your product and brand. Just not giving up, being persistent in general, beat whatever, the messaging that you put out there. And I just want to talk a little bit about branding. I think the best thing I've heard about branding is that it should be consistent across all channels. From the email you write, the language that you use, the tonality that you speak, the messaging for your brand, the landing page for your website. What are you expecting out of a user when they first land on your page? The way you talk to people at seminars, at meetups, the way you talk to investors about your brand, the customer experience, that little thank you note that they could get, when they receive your product. So I think that consistency is going to work on a subliminal level for your brand, right? They're not going to experience all of it on one table, but it's going to build on a subliminal level, and that's the power of branding. So it's really important to keep in mind that you might not be able to do all of this together, but that you will have to, at some point, get everything on an equilibrium. So maybe today your packaging is not neat. That's okay, but you build on making something else right, using the resources. So you prioritize, but that you are going to make your packaging really neat once you can get to it. So I think it's important to just keep that in mind, that you have to bring everything to a very consistent level, and that is going to be the power of branding.
That's a great way to sum it up. So, final question, Aditya. What is the biggest design lesson you have learned as a young CEO in starting your own company?
Well, biggest design lesson. I think so. There's a lot of noise out there, right? There's a lot of clutter. You open up newspapers, you spend time on Medium, or look at TED Talks, or you spend a lot of time on TechCrunch or whatever, right? there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of clutter. There's people talking about valuations and, companies shutting down, opening up, governments getting into the startup wave. So I think all of that said and done, it's important to not get caught up in all of this, and just focus on building your product, right? You'll go to meetups, you'll go to seminars, you'll go to conferences. You can get the feedback from people, when you talk to them about the product, no matter what stage, right? Idea stage, prototype, go to market, product market fit, growth stage, early revenues. It's important to take that feedback with a pinch of salt. I feel it's up to you as a founder to go back and think of the purpose, right? Of why you've built this. And I really recommend, looking up Simon Sinek's videos. He talks about a lot of why. So I think for me, that's been the biggest, takeaway in my journey in starting up, which is that you got to ask yourself and, find the answers just by going back to why you started this. People will only be able to tell you the answers that you're seeking in a very limited knowledge, right? So I think that's really important, to just go back and, just follow your gut and just build a product out there, and, not worry about failing, because failing is going to be good. You just worry about not failing faster. So just put your product out there faster so you can get the feedback and you can fail faster and you can learn from that and just build a product, and just keep putting that loop. And I think that's the biggest lesson I can give.
Thank you so much, Aditya, for all those insights. It was really great to learn more about not only how to incorporate humanity and empathy in your brand, but also how to be patient and how to work with yourself or with your team on incorporating design into brand in a way that appeals to people and that touches them, and that will ultimately build longevity for your brand. It was truly a pleasure hosting you today.
Thank you, Stuti.
I hope all you students found it as informative as I did. Do subscribe to our ReachIvy channel to get the latest information on college applications, student loans, financial aid, and all-around advice on applying to study abroad. If you have any further questions, please feel free to email us at help@reachivy.com or log on to www.reachivy.com and submit a query. Do join us for our next event. Thank you.